Hello everyone. In today's class, we are going to do chapter environmental issues. As we have talked in last part about the environmental issues, about the issues in our daily life, that how we are able to see India Gate before lockdown and after lockdown. So we have talked about the pollution, we have talked about pollutants, and on the basis of different parts, like on the basis of degradation, we have talked about biodegradable and non-biodegradable, and on the basis of in the form which they are released, we have talked about primary pollutant and we have talked about secondary pollutant, and we have classified pollutants on the basis of their nature. So on the basis of their nature, they are classified into qualitative and quantitative pollutant. So from this we get to know that this is a major concern and our environment is degrading because of the pollution, and these pollutants, these agents are causing the undesirable change. So as we have talked in the previous class about the pollution, that it is the undesirable change in air, water, soil, land. These all are the natural resources, right? So today we are going to focus on air pollution and we are going to solve the questions which come in the exam from the air pollution part. So let's start with the air pollution. We know that air pollution is major phenomena that is occurring these days because of the motorcycles, because of the vehicles, because of the factory waste, all the chemicals which are being released into the atmosphere. So air pollution is defined as the pollution caused by the substances. So like we have discussed, pollution is undesirable change. So this undesirable change in the air, like excess of CO2, right? That is the undesirable change which is caused by the substances like gases, particulate matter introduced into the air. So what are these gases which are being released into the atmosphere? That is carbon dioxide, harmful chemicals, and their vapors, right? So why it is happening? It is happening because of the anthropogenic activity. What is anthropogenic activity? This is the human activities which is leading to the excess of carbon dioxide in the air, and that is causing the air pollution. And the concentration, the amount is very much sufficient to cause the serious effect on health of the living beings. So like we have discussed in the previous part about the respiratory disease which has been caused due to the smog. So this smog comes out from smoke. When it gets reacted with fog, it forms smog. So because of the smog, these respiratory diseases are caused, and that these are affecting the health of the living beings and they are interfering with the life on the earth. So we can say that they are affecting the environment like the visual qualities. So as we have seen the India Gate in before the lockdown and after the lockdown, the visuality or the blurriness before the lockdown is because of the air pollution, and after the lockdown, during this lockdown period, the clarity is there, right? So this visual quality is decreasing by discoloring the atmosphere. Water quality has been decreased by throwing the garbage, waste, materials, everything into the water. Soil quality is decreased because of the presence of those contaminations which are harmful for the soil. Structure, vegetation, animals, and human health, because if we talk about the food chain, all of them are interlinked, and at last the human health is also decreased and human health is also affected. So let's talk about how to classify these air pollutants. So we have classified pollutants in different types like biodegradable, non-biodegradable, when we're talking about the qualitative, quantitative. Today we are going to talk about the air pollutants specifically. So if we classify air pollutants, it is based on the source. So based on the source, it is classified into stationary and mobile sources. And these stationary sources are further classified into point, fugitive, and area sources. Let's talk about these one by one. So when we're talking about the stationary means rest. That means it is not in motion. So they have a relatively fixed location. That means they are not able to move. They are at the particular location, and from there they are acting as a pollutant. Right? So they emit the pollutant from one or more controllable sites. So these sites are one or more, and they are emitting the pollutants like smoke stacks in power plant. So power plant is stationary, it is not motile, it is not mobile, it is not moving, it is on rest, and from here this can be acting as a stationary source, and they emit the pollution from that. So pollution is in the form of the smoke. Then we have the fugitive sources. So when we're talking about the fugitive sources, they generate the pollutants. So pollutants are being generated from the open areas exposed to the wind processes. Like, so if we talk about the burning of the agriculture purposes, right? So if we are burning the wood, if we are burning the tree, right, that is also causing the pollution, that is also causing the smoke. That is known as the stationary source and classified into fugitive sources or the point sources, right? When we are talking about the area sources, they are well-defined areas. That means these areas are well-defined within which there are several sources of air pollutants exist. Right? So where we are living, they are the well-defined areas, industrialized areas, agricultural areas. These all are the sources or the area sources from which the pollutants are coming. Right? So on the basis of their source, one is stationary, that means it is not moving, they have their fixed location, they are causing the pollution in the atmosphere, in the air. Second, we have the mobile sources. So mobile means movement. Movement, that means these sources are moving. They are not stationary, that means they are not at rest, and they move from one place to place while emitting the pollutants. Like you have the motorcycle, you have the cars, four-wheelers, right? You are able to move from one place to another because of these sources like automobiles, trucks, trains, ships, aircrafts. That is why they have been classified into the mobile sources. So this is on the basis of the source. First is stationary source and the second is mobile source. Second is based on their nature, right? So based on their nature, we have classified into primary pollutants and secondary pollutants. So as we have talked in the previous class also about the primary pollutants, these pollutants are emitted directly into the air. That means there is a source, that means they are identified, we are able to identify the source, and these pollutants have been directly emitted into the atmosphere. Let's look at the example. So for example, it's carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen, sulfur dioxide. So for example, we are burning the coal or the fossil fuels. These are the identifiable sources and they are emitting out sulfur dioxide, which is being released into the atmosphere or air. That is why they have been classified into the primary pollutants. These primary pollutants, they are less toxic. So they are less toxic means they are less harmful, they do not have that much chemical composition, right? And they continue to exist in the atmosphere in the form they are released. That means, for example, in the form of vapor, so they go, the sulfur dioxide goes in the air in the form of sulfur dioxide gas only, right? Second is the secondary pollutant. That means pollutants are produced, the reaction taking place between the primary pollutant and normal atmospheric compounds. So for example, this sulfur dioxide, which is the primary pollutant, is reacting with water. So it is forming some acids which are released into the atmosphere. So these are not identified. That means we are not able to identify the source. So from the primary pollutants, they react with the other compounds and the reaction takes place, which leads to the formation of the secondary pollutants like smog, acid rain. So acids present in the acid rain is caused because of the reaction of primary pollutant with other substances in the atmosphere, and they are very toxic. So like the primary pollutants, they are less toxic. Secondary pollutants, they are very toxic, and like we know that they exist in atmosphere as the modified product. Unlike the primary pollutants, they are present in the modified products. That means they are not present in the same form in which they are released. Next classification is based on their physical state. Physical state, as we know, like solid, there are three states of matter: solid, liquid, and gases. So based on the physical state, one is gaseous pollutant. So as the name gaseous, that means they are released in the form of gases. So these consist of gases such as carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen, and sulfur dioxide, that is causing the pollution. So all of the three here we see are in the form of gas and they are released as such and cause pollution. So they also contain the vapors of compound that have the boiling point less than 200 degree Celsius. So boiling point of those compounds should be less than 200 degree Celsius. That means they have been classified into the gaseous pollutant. Second is the particulate matter. So it can be form of the liquid and it can be in the form of solid. So these particles can be of solid, like the dust particles in the air. It can be in the form of liquid, like the mist particles in the air. So based on the physical state, they have been classified into gaseous pollutant and particulate pollutant. So these pollutants are causing a lot of pollution. So there should be some solution to it to remove the pollution and to remove the pollutants. We have different types of devices. So if we talk about the devices, there is one gravity setting. Then we have cyclone separator. Third, we have electrostatic devices. talking about the gravity setting, as the name suggests, gravity, that means everything will get separated and everything will form, all the pollutants will form on the gravity, right? We have the cyclone separator, that means all the dust particles and the pollutants are present in the center, whereas the clean particles will go on the walls of the cyclone separator. Third, we have the electrostatic devices, that means electro means electrons or charge. So we are going to talk about the electrostatic device in detail in our part. So what is scrubber? So scrubber is helpful in removing the harmful gases like sulfur dioxide from gaseous air, and the scrubbers are used. So if we look at the diagram, this is the structure of the scrubber. The dirty air moves in from here and it is mixed with water, or the line sprays there because with the dirty air and the water is mixed, right? At last, if we see, these harmful gases are passed through the spray of water or the lime to separate the clean air, and the clean air has been separated out. So we are going to talk about it in detail about these devices, how they are removing the pollutants and how these harmful gases have been removed. So let's talk about the electrostatic precipitator. So like we know that electrostatic precipitator, electro means charge or electrons, right? So electrostatic precipitator is for removing the particulate matter. So these particulate matter are in the form of solid and liquid. The most commonly used method to remove the solid and liquid pollutants is by electrostatic precipitator. So when we are talking about the electrostatic precipitator, it is very effective device to remove the particulate matter, and it works on the principle of electrical charging of the dust particle. Electrical charging means it helps in the dust particle to come into motion, and there are electrical charging of the dust particles. The principle is electrical charging of the dust particles and collecting them on a differently charged platform. So all the dust particles are charged and later they have been collected on this platform, right? So it can remove up to 99% of the particulate matter from the thermal power plant, right? So this thermal power plant, there is heat, there is water which is being generated, there's electricity, because of which it is removing 99% of the particulate matter. And this electrostatic precipitator, it has electrode wires. We know electrodes are electrically charged. It can be in the form of anode and cathode, which are maintained at the several thousand volts. That means the electricity is required. So these electrodes wire will produce a corona of the charges. These corona are actually the electrons. So they release the electrons at a very high potential difference. Then electrons and impart a negative charge to the dust particles by adhering them, and then they are collected by the positively charged plates. So we know that positive attracts negative. So these all the negative ones, dust particle, adhere to the electrons and they have been then collected on the positively charged plate. That is how it works. So emission from the steel plants, from the coal-fired power plants, So they all are removing the dust particles with the help of the electrostatic precipitator. So if we look at the diagram, this how electrostatic precipitator is working. These electrons attach to the dust particles, right? They give them a net negative charge. So here you can see there is a discharge of corona, that is of the electrons. There's a dirt air, these dust particles are there. Then there's a clean air, that means collecting plate is grounded and the negatively charged wires are connected and they are collected on the collection plate, which is positively charged, and the clean air is removed. So the collecting plates are grounded and attract the charged dust particles, and the velocity of the air, that means the speed of the air between the plates, must be low enough so that they all can fall. So all the dust particles can fall on the grounded plates. So this is how the complete electrostatic precipitator works. So this is about the solution of it, but we have to think about the causes and the effect of air pollution. So the main causes of the air pollution are automobile exhaust and the industrial processes. So let's talk about how the automobile exhaust, that means all the waste, all the dust particles which are released from the cars, from the two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and from the industrial processes, how they are causing the air pollution. So first we talk about the automobile exhaust. So we know that the important component of the automobile exhaust, they are carbon monoxide, they are oxides of nitrogen and hydrocarbons and the volatile organic compounds. We can call it as VOCs. So first let's talk about the carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide is colorless, odorless, that means there is no taste, and that even at very low concentration, this is extremely toxic to humans and other animals. Right? There is no smell of the carbon monoxide, it is colorless, and very low concentration is also extremely toxic. So to humans and the other animals, right? So what happens is this carbon monoxide, why it is harmful and toxic to humans? Because it binds to the hemoglobin. So when we are inhaling, so it binds to the hemoglobin in our blood and binds with the carbon monoxide very rapidly than it does with the oxygen. So if our blood will carry the toxic carbon monoxide blood, then it will be harmful for the humans. So effect of it is very harmful to people with the heart disease, because we know that there's a pumping of blood. If the pumping of blood contains the toxic carbon monoxide, hemoglobin is there, that will lead to heart disease. There is anemia, that means there is loss of blood, right? Or respiratory diseases also, that means they're not able to breathe. It may also cause the birth defect. So during pregnancy also, if carbon monoxide is inhaled, that can actually lead to the cause, or it can affect the baby. So including the mental retardation and impairment of growth. So in the fetus, it can lead to retardation in growth and the mental activity. Second is hydrocarbons and volatile organic compounds. So these hydrocarbons include a variety of organic compounds used as solvents. So these solvents, industrial processes like for the dry cleaning purposes, for degreasing, etc. So hydrocarbons are divided into methane and non-methane pollutants. So it can be classified into methane and non-methane pollutants or NMVOCs pollutants. So these hydrocarbons can react with sunlight to produce the photochemical smog, right? So you remember the photochemical smog is the secondary pollutant. So this secondary pollutant is formed by the reaction of the primary pollutant, and it can cause toxic effect to the plants and animals, and it can be converted to harmful compounds. So secondary pollutants are very harmful, and it can easily be converted to harmful compounds through the complex chemical changes, right? So this is how the hydrocarbons and volatile organic compounds are causing the pollution. Third is ozone. So ozone is considered as a pollutant in the lower atmosphere. So when we are talking about the ozone layer, it is protecting us from the harmful UV rays, right? But when the concentration of ozone increases, it is useful in the stratosphere, but it is acting as a pollutant in the lower atmosphere layer, that is troposphere, right? So it is toxic, it kills the bacteria, and it can kill other organisms in water. It can cause skin diseases. It is also harmful to rubber, paint, and textiles. So this is how this ozone is affecting. Let's talk about the industrial processes. So in industrial processes, first is sulfur dioxide. So sulfur dioxide, SO2. We have talked about it, that when there's a burning of coal or fossil fuels, there's a release of the gas which is sulfur dioxide. So the major activity or anthropogenic sources of sulfur dioxide is burning of fossil fuels, mostly coal in the power plants. So once the sulfur dioxide is emitted into the atmosphere, it can be converted through the oxidation reaction into the particulate sulfates. So when it reacts by the oxidation process, right, so it can be formed into sulfates. So these sulfates, they are removed from the atmosphere by the wet precipitation method only. So we have talked about the different methods how we can remove it. So these sulfates we can remove it by wet precipitation method, right? So the sulfur dioxide can cause a severe damage to the lungs of the human beings and other animals, particularly in the sulfate form. It causes the corrosion of the paints and metals because of the oxidation process of the sulfur dioxide. So oxidation leads to the corrosion of the paint and metals, and it leads to the rusting of the particles or the iron particles. It can also like important precursor to the acid rain. So there's a most famous case of Taj Mahal. So why Taj Mahal is looking pale yellow in color, the marbles are pale yellow in color because of the acid rain. And acid rain means rain having the pH less than 5.5. right? And this acid rain consists of sulfur dioxide, which is being released in the form of acid rain, and that is why it is affecting the Taj Mahal and the marbles are pale yellow in color. Next is fluorides. So fluorine, this is a univalent. So if you talk about the fluorine, how it is univalent, right? So what is the atomic number of fluorine? So if we talk about the atomic number, that means fluorine can form F negative, that is fluoride, right? So it gains electron, right? So it is a poisonous gaseous halogen. So what is halogen? Halogen is a group of fluorine, chlorine, bromine. So these are known as halogens, and they are the group 17 in the periodic table. So the source of fluoride ions include glass etching. What is glass etching? Glass etching means there's a chrome cleaning agents are there, which are ammonium bifluoride, volcanic eruptions, and metal cleaners which are present. So these are the noble gases. They are the compounds which combine fluoride with other positively charged counterparts. So when we're talking about this, in most of the cases, fluoride exposure are due to ingestion of dental fluoride products. So when we are ingesting dental fluoride product, that is how the concentration of fluoride ion fluorides increasing. So in case of humans, these helpful for the dental health in low dosage, but excess of anything is wrong. So if it is present in excess amount, that can lead to skeletal fluorosis. So in humans, exposure to the high concentration of fluoride interferes with the bone formation and causes skeletal fluorosis. In case of plants also, it reduces the yield, that is the amount in the fruit trees, and it delays maturing in crops. That means this fluoride is affecting the humans, it is affecting the fruits, plants, that means it is affecting the food chain. Let's talk about one of the case. So this is a case study of Delhi, which is actually controlling the vehicular air pollution. As you know, the Delhi is the capital of India and the population is very high, because of which the vehicles are very high and because of which the pollution is increasing. So New Delhi, the capital of India, is highly polluted city. Right, so there was a damage due to the air pollution and there was a PIL which was filed. PIL means public interest litigation on a particular cause which is affecting a lot of people, right? So it was filed in the Supreme Court of India. So the control measures after filing the PIL, there were control measures which were taken, like conversion of, or we can say there is introduction of catalytic converters in the passenger cars. So these catalytic converters, they are removing the harmful gases and they are being converted into the simpler substances. In 1995 it was done. Unleaded petrol. So petrol, if you look at the composition earlier, there was a petrol having the lead component. That is causing, when it is burned, it is releasing harmful gases. So in 1998 there was the ban on the leaded petrol and it led to the unleaded petrol. Then we have the reduction of the sulfur content, and we see the sulfur dioxide and sulfur sulfate, sulfur content is increasing, and because of which the pollution is increasing. So reduction in sulfur content in the diesel in 2000, and reduction of benzene content in the fuels, because benzene is very toxic in nature. So if we burn the fuel, these benzene content is also burned and that is releasing the harmful gases. So it was reduced into 2000. So by the end of 2002, all the vehicles which is used in public transport, such as buses in Delhi, started using CNG instead of the petrol, diesel. So CNG is compressed natural gas. So this compressed natural gas has been used by 2002 in the buses, but there are advantages and disadvantages of CNG also. So if we talk about the advantages of the CNG, it is a safer fuel because its ignition temperature, the temperature which is needed to burn the fuel, is higher than the conventional engine liquid fuels if we talk about the diesel and the petrol. Right, so in case of the diesel and petrol, the temperature to burn it is less as compared to the CNG. It's combustion means the release of carbon dioxide. It produces lesser number of pollutants. It is cheaper, that means the amount is also less as compared to the petrol or the diesel, and it cannot be adulterated, means it cannot be mixed with any other components. But there are some disadvantages of CNG also. So it requires a lot of space for storage because it is a compressed natural gas, so we need to have a cylinders to keep these gas for the proper storage, and hence it is not suitable for the smaller vehicle like the smaller cars. So we cannot use it for the motorcycles, scooties. We can only use it for buses. It has high ignition temperature. That means the temperature to burn it is 550 degrees Celsius, and it requires more air for ignition. That means there is more amount of air which is needed to ignite it. So that is also the disadvantage of CNG. Right? So Indian government is taking the measures to keep a check on the vehicular population pollution in other cities as well. So from this chapter, if we talk about, there are some questions which are very, very important. Right? So I have told you about the scrubber. So question came in NEET 2014 about the scrubber. That scrubber in the exhaust of a chemical industrial plant removes. So I hope you remember, it removes the sulfur or the sulfate particles or the sulfur dioxide. So you remember, when we are combining sulfur dioxide, the dust particles, with the water and with the lime, then there is a release of clean air. And in the previous class, I've told you about the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. So there was a question in NEET 2013 that we know that government is also helping in decreasing the air pollution. So the question was, Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act came into existence. So it came into existence in 1981. But if the question says when it was amended in 1987. So this is about the air pollution, how the air pollutants are causing, what are the different types, classification. I hope you understood. Thank you.